Yeah.
And we are live, Chevra. This is really, really incredible to be together. Welcome back to the Raice Brothers podcast. We're super excited to have the Holy Brother Abe on with us today.
Oh,
And we have some
yeah.
really exciting and fun topics we'll be getting into. Top dead tsaddikim books, and maybe even which dead tsaddikim we're just dying to get on the podcast. We're also looking forward to the upcoming chag of Lag BaOmer and what it means to us. Before we get going, I just want to ask you guys, if you like the content we're putting out, please hit that subscribe button and share with your friends. And it's pretty cool. Last night, as I was going through it, we noticed that we have listeners in Israel, in the States, England. But according to the podcast stats, it seems that we got some really committed fans in Ireland. So big shout out to you guys there. All
All
right,
right,
guys.
Ireland.
Abe, welcome. Yaakov, Gavat. It's good to see you guys.
Agit
Thank you. It's
vach.
really good to be here. Get vach. Get chaydesh.
Yeah. All right, we're going to jump right into it. I'll tell you, it's interesting. A number of years ago, Yaakov and I remember when I first met Reb Chaim Kramer, which is probably like a whole nother story in itself, going to Uman and all that. We've touched on it a little bit. Reb Chaim Kramer, I remember he was telling people and suggesting, he said, listen, if you guys are interested in learning Torah and you're exploring different things, here's a great taste test. Go for like a week or two and take a half hour a day. In that half hour, you have 6 5-minute periods. And in each one of those periods, choose a different sefer and do it for 5 minutes a day and just see after a week or two what talks to you. And he says, the one thing I'm asking you is make Breslov one of those svarim. Put that in as one of your 6 books that you're giving a shot to. So I wanted to put it out there today. We're having a lot of interesting dynamic questions. I wanted to hear from you guys. What would your 6 books be? For yourself, for others, like, what do you think? Yaakov, what's your story?
Abe, you first.
6 books.
Yeah, meaning, like he would say, I don't know, try out a Ramchal, try out a Chumash, try this. I don't know, try different things, but try out one of the Breslov, books, one of the Breslov Sfarim, and see just like what talks to you. So if you would suggest somebody who feels, let's say, they're not connected to Torah, they're not connected to, I don't know what I like, I don't enjoy things. Say, saying if you're going to give it a shot, try out 6 different books. What would you put out there to give somebody like a decently wide range, and that talks to you? I feel like you'll find something here.
I'll tell you, first of all, the question, I feel like it's a complicated question because, it really depends on who I'm talking to and what his situation in life is and, what his level of scholarship, etc. But what I'd say for someone who knows how to learn a little bit, I would go with a variety of different topics. So I would definitely, if we're talking about someone who's not learning at all and now you just want to start, you're like starting to learn, and let's say you know how to read because you're doing this by yourself, right? So you know how to learn a little bit. Okay, so I'd say definitely number 1, pick up a Chumash and Rashi because that's the basics. So I would say Chumash and Rashi, number 1. Learn a Mishnah or maybe part of a Mishnah with Kahati. I love Kahati. It's just the best Pirush on Mishnayos. I learn Mishnayos with Kahati all the time. So that's what I would go for. Next, I'm debating whether to put Gemara in there. Let's leave it on the side for now. For my Breslov book, I'm going to have to go with my favorite, Meshivas Nefesh. Definitely we're going to come back to that later when we talk about favorite Sfarim. But I would go for Meshivas Nefesh just because it gives you that jolt of energy every day, that good chizuk that you need to keep going. And if you're going to start off a project like this and you're going to put a Breslov book in, I would go for a Breslov book that pumps you with good energy and chizuk, and that doesn't, and keeps you rocking. So that's those 3. Now I got 3 more to fill, right? As an English speaker, I would say definitely make one of them an English book, at least one, if not more. and we're going to hit the English books also later on, but
It's funny. This
you
is
know what?
where I feel like being brothers, we might not be getting the dynamic differences that we're looking for. I'm like, I'm so with you on some of those.
All right, so you're with me on those? That's cool. We could do this together. It could be a collaborative effort.
Yeah, I think that I would go for it. Like, I happens to be that for me, I think one of those English books has got to be like a core, book. Like I'm a fan of, Rabbi Kaplan, just to get something in there, whether you're talking about a beginner and going through some of just the core ideas about tefillin, tzitzis, prayer, mikvah, or going into something, more esoteric, meditation or inner space, or but he's such a phenomenal writer. And then also you have like his translations, so you can't go wrong. Like for me, I would definitely put a Ramchal book on there. A Derech Hashem, maybe a Das Tvunas. Like they're especially if there's somebody who's looking with like an English writing, it's their core ashkafic, texts that are out there that are just amazing. Then you also, with Rabbi Kaplan, you also have the, Sefer Abba here. There's a lot of interesting.
That's very out there, though.
It is. So I'm saying. So, like with Rabbi Kaplan, he really wrote so much that takes you from the beginning all the way to there. You also can go with like Rabbi Nachman's wisdom, which Sichos Haran, and these are amazing.
Good move, Yehuda. I like that you gave one answer that holds so much. It's like mu'at machzekes amaruba, mamish.
Hey, where are you at? What kind of books would you are on your list?
I guess like Yaakov said, it kind of goes down to who you're talking to. That's like the first thing, But I'm very much on the Rav Aryeh Kaplan trip, and I'm working my way through a lot of his books at the same time. I'm a little ADD like that, so I carry a lot of books with me wherever I'm going. But I'll tell you something. I heard, Reb Shlomo used to say, "You're always safer with a sefer." So I guess it just was Reb Moshe Kabriner's yahrzeit, and my first thought was like, whatever I happen to be in middle of at that time, and I meet somebody, it's probably has something to do with that sefer.
Nice.
So I might tell them, "Hey, you got to read this. This is great."
That's mamash kebab. Yeah, that
there are some like core books or Sfarim from Rav Aryeh Kaplan, like I think Perceptions. That it's like a thin book, blue book, but it's amazing.
Is that like a collection of essays, that one?
No, it goes through like birth, transitional things, relationship with God, relationship with Judaism. Mm. If you haven't read it, yes, it could be. It's definitely a go-to that I, recommend to people all the time.
Yeah, Rav Aryeh Kaplan was, I think, it was like, that was when I was a teenager. That's when I started reading Rav Aryeh Kaplan. I was like 17 maybe. And that's what really, like when I first started seeking for myself as like a young adult, like I want to know what this Yiddishkeit is about, what's going to drive me, was Rav Aryeh Kaplan. That's what I started with. When I was learning in Medrash Shmuel, I used to jump out of second Seder an hour early, like 6 o'clock. I would go with a friend of mine. We would chill, and then we would go to his room and just read Rav Aryeh Kaplan. And that was like, that's what started, and that gave me like, so ever since, and you could just read those books again and again and again. It's awesome.
Yeah. He's definitely one of the Jewish writers that to me, once I was opened up to him, every single book that I can get my hands on of his, I got it and I read it, because it's just super core, super amazing. His breadth of knowledge is phenomenal, and just it takes you into the whole world where, I don't know. He was definitely the first one. I think Rabbi Leo Kitov also for me, but he mamish brought me in there. Rabbi Kaplan. And
jumping ahead, we got to complete the 6.
Oh, sorry. So let's go back. By the way, I think we got to throw out halacha, meaning I
was about to say that, man.
Yeah, because first of all, I'll tell you, this actually is an interesting topic, because we're kind of hitting a few things. One is, we're saying what is something that you enjoy reading or you enjoy exploring, and another thing that we're putting out there is, I remember I used to have this running challenge with people, is that I guarantee every person that they can find something in Torah that they enjoy it, or that Torah is enjoyable. The problem is that many people, their exposure to Torah has been in a very narrow bit of Torah. Somebody who's, let's say, been forced to only learn Gemara, as a kid or whatever, or their relationship with Chumash is still on, a first or second grade relationship where they haven't been opened up to it. Torah is so vast and so different, and there have been so many different writers and personalities that I really don't believe that there's anybody out there that cannot find something enjoyable in Torah, besides the fact, the spiritual benefits, but simply from an enjoyable intellectual pursuit standpoint, and from an emotional standpoint, meaning connecting to Torah, connecting to one's Jewish history and to the story of what it means to be a Jew. There's so much Torah out there. And right. I think that some people are just like halacha people, whether it means, reading a Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, Mishnah Berurah, Aruch HaShulchan, anything, even, I don't know, learning Rambam. Learning Rambam's awesome. It's like, you read it, and so many times I find myself like going back to a Rambam and being like, it just, we sometimes lose that the relationship with what a mitzvah is, or with what's going on, when we get lost in lost in the trees, and we miss the forest, and like these farms just really can open us up.
What's your go-to halacha sefer?
For
5
me?
minutes a day. Yep.
I'm an Aruch HaShulchan guy, much like you. It's also, by the way, he also is very story-like. It's very much like he's bringing you into a world. It's not dry halacha. Like even the way he talks about different people, and he goes, well, this one says this, but I really don't get where he's coming from. I kind of like this, and like it's very dynamic for me.
Yeah, I feel like he writes in a very personal style. Like you feel like there's a real person there. It's not just a book.
Right. And he's also telling you about, like, he talks about other people, not like just as like Shito. He talks about like as an evolving story of halacha. Yeah, I enjoy it.
Yeah, I also love about what I love about the Aruch HaShulchan is that he'll take a whole sugya and he'll build it up. He'll be like, okay, the Gemara says this, and the Rambam, and the Rif, and this and that, and the Sefer Chinuch, and he builds it up, and then he brings it down to practical halacha, like, and then he'll not be afraid to like argue on everybody and like give you some kula, because like that's what we do. Like that's not halacha, but this is what we do, and this is why it's okay.
Right. Right. It's funny, I've been learning Hilchos Tefillah for the last little bit now, because I'm kind of on this trip where we did this thing on davening, but like davening for Tikkun HaShechina, and then I realized like maybe people don't really understand, or maybe I don't really understand what davening is. Simple davening, how like davening is one of the pillars that the world stands on, and we're put into this world maybe just to pray. And when you get into it, so I was like going back through a lot of the core things. I started like, I'm gonna go through the Aruch HaShulchan on Tefillah, skipping Kriya Shema, straight to, I'm talking about just Shemona Esrei. And it's so interesting, and he does that also all the time, like eating before davening or drinking before davening. It's a very interesting topic.
But what would but what would you suggest, like halacha? Has anyone come across a good English simple halacha sefer, like something that you can, it's not too complicated, but it's good and clear? Well, anybody?
I mean, I think there's. I can't say that I do.
There's like a set.
I get like a daily halacha thing on email. That's my halacha.
No, that works as long as it's something that's like digestible, and
Yeah.
Those are awesome. Also, those are amazing.
Halacha for today, I think it's called. I don't know.
There are also so many books that are not like specifically going through all halacha, but just something that's, let's say, going into Hilchos Shabbos. So there's really good sets of svarim that you just read, and they bring you into the world, or halachos of brachos, or like just this. And there's so many books out there that are really good. Right? At least I enjoy.
All right, so now we hit how many categories do we hit so far? We hit Chumash, which is a basic Mishnah. We hit Chassidus, the Breslov at least. Maybe we could do another Chassidus in there.
Mm-hmm.
We hit a Halacha. We hit a foundational Jewish texts. You said either a Barry Kaplan, or if you want the Hebrew, you go with or like a Ramchal. And
I think Rabbi Kaplan and Ramchal are different. Meaning, I think you can go for, or I would go put a Ramchal Sefer in there.
I'm talking if you were going in the foundational Jewish texts, like Jewish philosophy basics, you could go with. That's what I was saying. You could go with Ramchal or with Rabbi Kaplan, depending on what floats you. Right, you could go both. But I'm talking about now we have a sixth, and in the sixth one, I would say like, all right, let's get a Kabbalistic, something Kabbalistic. What would you say? 5 minutes a day. That's what I think for the last one. You could tell me you want a different category there for the last one.
Listen, you could just read Zohar. As soon as you can just read Hebrew text, even without understanding it, and you read it for 5 minutes, you're gonna be filled with light.
That's true.
But in the world of Hasidus, I put out Piasetzna. And I would say go all the way to the beginning of the introduction to the Cheves HaTalmidim, which is like a core text. It's 20-something pages, maybe 30 pages of just core introduction on how to raise yourself to grow, how to open yourself up, how to work with a child, or if you're an educator, dealing with other people. Not trying to change people, but helping people flower and grow. Piasetzna's good. Abe, where are you at with this one?
I don't know. I think we can break this down into like multiple more categories. That's the problem. It's like we're going with foundational, but we're also, in a sense, talking to somebody who is fluent in the language, in the texts. It also depends on what level somebody is at, where what basics of Chassidus they know. Sometimes you can throw something in where So I guess Piasetzna for sure is definitely sounds very good. I love the Piasetzna.
Okay, so let's segue a little bit, and maybe we'll come back to this. I want from each of you guys just simply your top 5 books. And it doesn't have to be what you were into 5 years ago. Just tell me right now, what's your top 5 books that you're into?
Wow. Top 5?
It doesn't have to be exactly 5 either.
Top 5. But are we going English books or we're going Sfarim? Where are we?
I mean, Sfarim. They could be English Sfarim, but Sfarim.
Top 5 Sfarim. Likutei Moharan is always with me. And there's, always different things that I'm going through. I always have a Medrash Says with me. I always have the Tzena Arena with me. Then it kind of rotates. Like I'm in the middle of it's not. I don't know if it's considered a sefer. Elie Wiesel's like Souls on Fire.
Yeah.
It's just I can go back to this many times over, and then he's some of his other books. I don't know, man. Top 5 is like, you're talking about right now. It's like right this second. I could tell you that I'm surrounded by more than 5 books just from Shabbos. So
the Souls on Fire book goes through 4 Rebbes, right?
A little more.
A little more.
For those of you who want that, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a book you can read again and again and again. So
yes.
Good.
Rambam Shmona Prakim.
That's a core.
Where am I at? I'm saying that I have with me like
Yeah.
almost like basically daily, I guess.
I don't think I ever learned that. What's it about?
It's amazing. It's explains your the different aspects of oneself. It's based on Avos, or it's like an introduction, I guess, to Avos. And I've been handing that out recently. It's been a giveaway from the I go to the used farm store, although I haven't been there since before Corona business. But I would go there, pick up. They sell like the little green ones. I don't think I have it here. Actually took with me today. The introduction to the Mishnah. But they have like these little guys. Avram Yaakov Finkel. So they have these little guys. They sell them for $2 at the used bookstore. I buy them and I like to give them out to people. So I think I'm at 5, right? L'chaim.
Yeah, you think you might have
L'chaim.
that. Something like
Rambler.
that. Yankles.
L'chaim. I got my cup of cinnamon tea with honey in honor of David HaMelech.
Look at that sediment.
Ah, that's the good stuff.
So
What are my top 5 books right now or all time? I'm not sure. Maybe it'll be a mix. So one I already mentioned earlier, which was Meshivas Nefesh. Top 5 of all time for me. And like I said, because it's just a collection of all the chizuk in Likutei Moharan and Likutei Halachos. It's just stuff that lifts me up again and again. And to me, what drew me to Breslov more than anything else was the chizuk, constant chizuk. And I need that. I feel like if I don't have it, I get lost. But I've read that book so many times that like it's like so many things in there are just that's how I think now. Like I just like my mantra is it's okay, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay, it's all good. Let's move on. Let's start now. That's like one of my mantras just from reading that book so many times. So I love that book. Ema Banim Smecha. Absolutely love that book because of its positivity and how he shows you it just shows you how to find the good. He's always looking for the good. It's all about Eretz Yisrael and rebuilding Eretz Yisrael and the Chiv to come back and everything, but it's just so positive and so uplifting. There you go. Ema Banim Smecha.
you have the full size. This is the abridged version.
That's the essential.
Love that book.
Yes.
Like you said, I'm with you on the Likutei Moharan. It's just such a fascinating book. I feel like anything else you learn, it's like you see where it's going and you could like say, okay, maybe you could take like an educated guess of where it's going next. With Likutei Moharan, Rabbi Nachman just left fields you all day long. He's like, boom, he throwing you curveballs and you can never get comfortable in Likutei Moharan. It's like always something else. You're always on the edge of your seat. And it's so interesting. And it takes work, but when you really work at it, and like you work on a Torah, and it's like I remember the first time I read Likutei Moharan, it was gibberish, like I didn't understand a thing. I was like, all right, I don't know what this is. And then I even found the English one, and I opened up the English. And I'm like, okay, it's great English. I couldn't understand a word. It made no sense to me. But then, like, I learned from teachers, and then eventually you learn and work on it, and it opens up, and you work on the Torah, and it opens up to you, and it's like it's such an exciting thing to learn. So much fun, and so insightful, and it just gives you. It's a deep dive. Love Likutei Moharan, and I would throw Likutei Halachos in there because when you learn Likutei Moharan and you learn Likutei Halachos with it, it's like one limud. So, that's I'm gonna count both for one, if that's okay. Sefer HaTodah from Rabbi Eliyahu Kitov is his writing is so elegant and so beautiful, and the stuff the ideas he brings out, the way he puts things together, like nowhere else. Like the Sefer Torah goes through the whole Jewish year by month, and but then there'll be whole sections. Like for example, one of my favorite sections in the book is all about the life of David HaMelech, which is in Chodesh Sivan for Shavuos, and he goes through the life of David HaMelech. And if you've never read him go through David HaMelech's life and describe it, you've never understood anything about David HaMelech. It's so beautiful. He describes his whole life and all the things he went through, and he connects it with what David HaMelech says himself and tell him. It's absolutely fantastic. In fact, I think I want to do a separate series just reading that in preparation for, and put that out in preparation for Shavuos, so people could just go through the life of David HaMelech. So Sefer Tzaddah. And he also goes through halacha. He goes through halacha and agada there. So like each month he go through a little bit of halacha, but the way he writes halacha also is so beautiful. He has a flow and a grace to the way he writes. Absolutely gorgeous. I love reading it. And for my last one, I'm going to say any Gemara. I love Gemara. I don't always. It's hard to learn sometimes, and sometimes I'll go months that I cannot open a Gemara. But when I'm able to sit and learn Gemara, it's the most immersive learning, and it's just it engages you heart and mind. It's hard to describe. It's hard to describe what a really immersive Gemara experience is, but I'll tell you. One time I was learning with Reb Aaron Rothman, who he's one of my rabbis, and I was learning in his kollel, and we were learning Bava Kama. I remember, I think it was Daf Hey, and we were learning the Taisus in the Ba. I think it was a Taisus about Bar, and I was trying to understand this Taisus, and there was a Marsha, and we were learning the Taisus, the Marsha, and like breaking our heads to try to put it together. And then at some point, like we chopped what the Marsha was saying and how Taisus made sense, and we just jumped up and started dancing. It was just the happiest dance. It was such a good feeling. So that's why I have to put Gemara on there.
Wow, that's awesome. That is really awesome. You can't argue with that list. I'm a big fan, big fan of a lot of those things that you put on there. Mamash. And I think that
Give us your top five. I'm so excited to hear your top five, Yehuda.
Well, I happen to be. It's like it's a little bit counterclimactic when after you. So I think I'm gonna have. I don't know what just happened there.
I hear you loud and clear, brother.
Oh, okay. Looks like we jumped out for a second. So I'm gonna have to just go with maybe just a little bit different things, because just to like jump on some different points, not to reiterate some of the same things.
Can I just say one thing?
Yeah.
You could say the same thing, but it's going to be your spin on it and your energy, because you're totally different.
That's true. So I'm saying, I think Gemara, like if I would choose one, I think it might have to be Kedushin. Kedushin has just been that Masechta for me. Like I love that. But anyhow, I'm gonna let's jump into what I think my top five are. Likutei Moharan. It's been on both your lists, and it really is such a unique limud. It's one of those books that, for me, if you would have asked me, you would have said, choose one Torah from Likutei Moharan to put on as my favorite sefer, I would still choose the sixth. I would choose Torah Vav, or Reish Beis, or like, and just put it on there, and that could be the whole book for me. You know what I mean? Like, and there's so many that I would even choose from there that we could go through and argue, because it's been my whole life, and it becomes so, it's immersive. It's immersive in a way that even Gemara is immersive, but it's different. But it's a crazy world. You're in Rabbi Nachman's life, but you're in your life, but you're in all of Torah, and you're it's alive within you. It's crazy. Gemara also, so you really need to be part of it. Like if you're not immersed in it, then you're kind of out of it. But Likutei Moharan, even if somebody doesn't understand it, it's like immersive. It's filled with light. It's crazy. It's like, in that way, it's like reading Zohar. It's just straight light. So that's that. But I do also want to jump in. I think Chumash is one of my favorite books, especially Chumash Bereshis. Chumash Bereshis, it's every year I come back to it, and we all come back to it, and it's stories and teachings and my whole life, like my whole world is mamish in Chumash Bereshis. Like the whole formation of Am Yisrael, of the Avos going into Mitzrayim, and all the dynamics are so much a part of me. And I'll be honest with you, for me, stories is a really high has a really high standard. You know, I'm a story guy through and through. I love stories, Rabbi Nachman stories. I love, you know, Rabbi Leo Kitov stories. I love Baal Shem Tov stories. I love reading stories. And for me, stories captivate my mind. Stories of tzaddikim, and especially the Chumash stories, they so completely captivate my mind that I just become lit up by it. And when the stories of Chumash Bereshis, which have entered me from when I was so young and so little, that that as I build on it, so even it's like way before the intellectual side of my brain really fully matured. And so it's there with me, but yet it's also, the more that I learn it, and every year new depths open up. I don't know, so Chumash is huge. Right now, I'm also, the last number of years, I've been deep into, welcome back. I've been deep into the Sfarim of the Baal Shem Tov, and like the early core Talmidei Baal Shem Tov. And those Sfarim have been really lighting up my life in a big way. Last couple of years, it's been like what I've been immersed in. So I guess if I had to choose one, you know, I guess it would be like Keser Shem Tov. It's just mind-blowing teachings from the Baal Shem Tov, and it just, it's Gewalt. It's mamish Gewalt.
Shameless plug, check out the Best Blast playlist. Good stuff.
I really haven't been putting out enough of them, but we're going to be putting out more and more of them. It's every time, and you know something, many times you can even learn the same piece in the Keser Shem Tov, and depending on where you're at, it'll open up in new ways. Like, and many times they need to be opened up. That's kind of the idea with that. But I think the last one that I'm going to have to go for, you put out Sefer HaTodah, you put out, you know, like that's also like when I got into Rabbi Okito, if I'm going to leave that for a whole nother part of this, I think it might be Shla. Learning Shla for me is an interesting story. I actually, when my one of my Rebbeim, Rav Belsky, Daniel Belsky, when I was by him, so I was like, you know, pounding a lot of Chassidus, and he was always pushing me. He's like, Yehuda, go draw from the wells that they drank from. And I was like, what are you talking about? He goes, where do you think the Chassidim are Rishonim, like what did they learn? What did the Baal Shem Tov learn? And so I was like, I don't know. He goes, Shla, learn Shla. And the truth is,
Shla Kudish ni.
Shla Kadosh, yeah. It's like, you know, there's only a few Sfarim that are like that. You know, the Ar Chaim HaKadosh, Shla Kadosh. The Shla Sefer is one of those books that was completely closed to me for a long time. And every time that I tried to open it up, didn't make any sense. And then one night, probably, I don't know, like 12 years ago, I was, you know, I didn't know what it was. It was just another random night, but I was reading In the Lion's Den from Reb Elio Kitov, which we'll get into soon. Those are the stories. And I was reading about the Balatanya, and how Reb Shner Zalman of Liadi, like the way that the Chevra Chap, that he was mamish in the world of Chassidus, was because he was just pounding Shla all the time. And little did I know that it was actually the Balatanya's yahrzeit. At that point, I wasn't so, you know, I guess I wasn't as up to date. And the next day I was so lit by this story, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna do it. I went to the Beis Medrash the next day. I pulled out the Shla and I just went through the entire table of contents, and the whole thing just started lighting up. And then like I saw like different pieces that I wanted to look, and I just spent hours just like standing by the edge of a Beis Medrash, just like looking through and reading it. And it was just, and then I finally got my own Shla, and it's a wild limud. And many times I learn it and I have no clue what he's talking about. but it's mamish. But some of the pieces are just wow. He's life changing. So anyhow, yeah, that's my
Awesome.
five. That's my five.
Fire, baby.
L'chaim, l'chaim.
L'chaim. Yeah, I know. I feel like I want to have a l'chaim now, just to like settle myself after all the excitement of hearing like, it's funny because it's, I'm not always able to learn, busy. We work, we spend a lot of time on work and family and taking care of the house and things. And it's hard to like have set times to learn. But when we remind ourselves of what we enjoy and the chiyus that we get from it, it's important, so important. I feel lit up just talking about the Sfarim that in the past I've experienced chiyus from, and hearing from you guys what lights you up. It's a big chizuk to like, go and open a sefer and get involved.
You should know that many times I just walk in front of like my bookshelf and I just look at the different books that are on there. I just schmooze. I'm like, hey, hey Kedushin, hey Baba Metzia. And then like you just like gently caress it, and you always on your bookshelf you can make yichudim that nobody else could make, like in their lifetime gewalt, who would have thought the Vilna Gaon and the Baal Shem Tov, but like on your bookshelf you can put it together, you can do whatever you want, The truth is, I mean, we have to be careful because we're leaving a lot of people and a lot of books. Like as I was going through this, we schmoozed a little bit before to like go through, to kind of prep a little bit for this, for today, because there's so many ideas and books out there. And I was going through my bookshelves and I was like, oh my gosh, but like Sfarim of Rav Kook, I couldn't put them on my top 5, or definitely on the ones for people to learn 5 minutes a day, because you cannot learn Rav Kook 5 minutes a day. Maybe you could, but it's very hard. It's hard text. But oh man, and there's also some really good English books that have brought from Rav Kook. Like, oh man, I can't even. I'm gonna get lost. Okay, so
yeah, I wanted to move on to like the next topic, which is connected to this, because you mentioned stories, and I feel like stories are in their own category. Like, I also absolutely love stories. I love telling stories. I love reading stories. I love listening to stories. I feel like you were saying that like the Torah starts with stories. Stories are even more foundational and they go a lot deeper than learning like Torah itself, in a sense. So I feel like I want to talk.
Chazal says, right? Chazal say the stories of the servants of the avos are more dear to Hashem than the halachas of the children, right? Because the story by Eliezer Eved Avraham, we mamash see it spoken out, of details, the this, but like halacha, sometimes like you could have like a half a pasuk. It mamash has like mounds and mounds of halachas.
Exactly. I was just reading the Aruch HaShulchan. It says there's actually not a single mitzvah that's written out, like how to actually do it in Torah Shabbat. That's all in Torah Shabbat Peh, but stories galore, and the stories they're not written out either. You have to like figure out what's going on. You have to get into them. But the next topic I think we were going to talk about is really storybooks, like Jewish storybooks or English or books in English that have really, like, not halacha, not Torah, stories that really have really given you chiyus and your favorites, I guess, simply.
Okay, so go. Jump on in. What are your top 3 English books or your English books of stories?
So my favorite Jewish book of all time is called Go My Son. Have you guys read that book? It's a true story. Actually, my son Nachman's in class with this guy's great grandson, I think. It's a true story of a fellow named Chaim Shapiro who was living in Poland before the war. And he ended up running away into Soviet Russia for the duration of the war. And he ended up joining the Polish division of the Red Army and fought against the Nazis at the end of the war. But the whole story, it's a story of miracles, first of all. It's a story of devotion to Yiddishkeit. He was completely separated from Jews, and he was in the crazy places. But it's also so normal. He describes his journeys through Russia and the people he met, and the relationships he created with people. And most of them weren't Jewish. Very deep relationships he had with people. And he also talks about how he connected with people, Russian poetry, and he really takes you into the soul of the Russian people during the war. It's a fascinating book. It's absolutely.
Hey, did Yaakov just cut out for you?
Yep.
Rich,
Okay.
and the characters are very well fleshed out, and it's fascinating. Great book. I read it many, many, many times. Am I breaking up?
You broke up for a second, but you're back.
All right. And I actually just read it to my kids. Took a few months to finish it. We read a little bit every night. That was a lot of fun. Okay, that's number one. Number two of my favorite Jewish books is All for the Boss. All for the Boss is, again, another story about a family that lived in a true story. This is memoirs. A Jewish family lived in the America. It's really about a woman. This woman, Rabbi Ruchama Shane, wrote it about her father, Rabbi Yaakov Yosef Herman, and he was hardcore, very stark Yid who lived in America in the early 1900s and then through the war era, and he's a very intense guy. So in some ways, it was like even a little bit too intense for me, but he was also the most beautiful, alive Yid. He was known as the Machnas Oreach of New York. He was always had Jews in his house, constantly serving Shabbos meals, always. Whoever needed a place, they knew you came to New York, you went to his house. And he was a person who burned with fire of Yiddishkeit no matter where he went and what he did. So it's just the most inspiring book. I actually read that book to my kids multiple times, and it just inspires me. It's just stories of real people who are heroes. Like Jewish people are heroes. All Jewish people are heroes, I feel like, or we all come from heroes because all of our grandparents lived in crazy places and went through things. And I like to hear stories of Jewish heroism, which is like the first halach in Shulchan Aruch that at the beginning of Shulchan Aruch, right, says the Ramah says, don't pay attention to anyone who looks at you. Don't be embarrassed in front of everybody. You just do what you got to do as a Yid and don't pay attention to anybody else. And I love stories about Yidden. Yidden have always had to do this no matter where we go. I love reading those stories. It gives me a lot of chazak. The third book I'm going to mention over here is Making of a Gadol. Making of a Gadol is not an easy book to read. It's really actually very difficult because it's written like a Gemara parish almost, and it's like really hard words, and the structure is really difficult. And if there wasn't, I think if there wasn't a controversy about it, then like barely anybody would have read it because it's just not an easy book to read. But the amount of amazing information in that book, and where it takes you, like it's ostensibly a book about Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky, and the author is Rabbi Nassim Kamenetsky, his son. So it's about his father, but most of the book actually is about the Litvish world from the mid 1800s to the early 1900s. So you have this incredible, and it's all from interviews with his father and others that he was getting information about his father, and he interviewed these people and they told him stories upon stories. So, and it's all real. It's very real. It's not whitewashed. It's real stories about real people. And it took me into the Litvish world more than any other thing. And I finally got a feeling for what Lita was about and what drove them. Reb Nassim Tzvi Finkel, the Alter of Slobodka, talks about there a lot about our Zaidi, Rabbi Yisrael Salanter, the stories about him. and it brings the when you read the stories and really read them again and again, it brings these people to life because it talks about real things that they did, and he goes into detail in the stories. Like, for example, there's a famous story. I'm sorry, I'm talking a lot.
No, this is great, and I'm actually hoping that you're going to go into this part because this is like the one part of the book that I read because you gave it to me to read. So.
Wait, I'm not sure which part. I'm not sure if I'm saying the same one, but there was one story about. There's a famous story about Yisrael Salanter when he ate on Yom Kippur. There was an outbreak, a virus that was going around. Maybe it was cholera, and he was in Vilna, and he paskined that you had to eat on Yom Kippur because there were people. I'm not going to get into details. The question was, why did he paskin that you have to eat? Did he actually eat? The story goes he got up in Shul and he made Kiddush and ate in middle of Shul in Vilna on Yom Kippur to show everyone that they had to eat. The question is, what did he do? Why did he do it? Why did people disagree with him? And there's so many different versions. And when Rav Nosson Kamenetsky is just a classic example of what he does in the book. I just have him turning around because I have the book right over here. Making of
when
the
you turn around, you cut out every time.
Okay, so I'll stop doing that. I feel the book pulling me like I need it. So actually, a big shout out to Yoeli Klein who bought this book for me. Thank you, Yoeli. It's been years of delight. So what he does is he takes the different versions of the story. Rav Nosson Kamenetsky, the author, he takes the different versions of the story, and he asks the steeros. It's mamash like a Gemara. I'll bring this version of the story and this version and the third version, and he'll ask steeros from one to the next. And then he'll be miyashiv and say, and this must be what the real story is based on the three different versions we have. And he'll say, this must be what was going on. This must be what he thought, what he said, and this must be what happened. And this must be the series of events. It's fantastic. So, not an easy read, but if you're able to handle it, it's a deep dive into Litta, the real Litta, the real Rosh Hashivas of Litta.
Well, yeah, wow. That was a serious, awesome introduction to some of those books. Hey, what do you got for us? What's your favorite English book?
That's 5?
No, it's 3.
That's 3.
You just gave us 3.
Can I do 2 honorable mentions? Quick, short.
Of course.
Of course.
Number 1, Holy Brother, about Rav Shlomo Carlebach. It takes you into Rav Shlomo's life like none other. It's written by Yitta Halberstein Mendelbaum, and there's a foreword by Elie Wiesel, and it's just Rav Shlomo is one of my heroes, and this book just gives you amazing stories about him. Amazing stories. There you go. That was my.
You said you had one more. You had 2.
I do have another honorable mention, but I think you're going to get into it. So I'm going to let you talk about Rebelio Kitov's storybooks.
Okay. You are correct. Go, Abe, take us away. What are your 3 English books?
3, I don't know. After listening to that, I'm I'm having all kinds of bilbulim about which, I didn't really have a chance to look at the topics that we were going to discuss. We briefly discussed it on Friday. I think that Hasidic masters, it's not really stories. I love stories of the Rebbe's Hasidic stories of all kinds. And I love reading them. I love listening to them. And so it's a little bit of a different path than where you were going. I didn't really think about that. So now I'm just confused.
It's okay. The truth is that when we said English books, I was not thinking storybooks. For me, I just kept on going to storybooks in Svarim. Even just when I was thinking about it, because I'm just such a story guy. Even Daniela, she saw what I was doing. She's like, "Oh, what is that?" She goes, "Oh, isn't it all just going to be storybooks? Because you just love stories." And I was like, "Yeah, it pretty much is." But that's really what, the truth is, even a Gemara, when you read a Gemara, it's like the Gemara is always, we learn so many interesting things. It's always from a story, or it's the Gemara makes a story out of it. It's very alive. It's not dry. But So yeah, when Yaakov went into the story aspect, I didn't even catch that we were going to do it that way, but that's cool. And it's all open. Like for me, I was actually thinking Book of Our Heritage is just like a classic English book, or Inner Space or things like that. But in terms of storybooks, like, Gewalt.
So give us, I'm saying you must have good collections of stories that you love. There must be some books that, like, when you need a good story, what's your go-to?
Souls on Fire.
Souls on Fire is where I'm at right now. I mean, Rabari Kaplan's Hasidic Masters is amazing. Just because it gives you like a little portrait of what those specific masters were. So I don't know if that's what we're talking about, but right now I'm also in middle of reading Adin Steinsaltz's,
Yes.
the stories from Rabbi Nachman, which is like just amazing. He's also like the way that he gives it over is really amazing. Which again, once I'm talking about like Rabbi Nachman stories, like I have like a small book that I think was put together by, I don't remember who has azamra.org. It's like a small sefer from Rabbi Nachman, which travels with me also pretty much everywhere, that has like different stories in it. But that wasn't really what I was thinking, the direction that you were going also. I think it was more like Hasidic stories, which, I don't know. Holy Brother does hang out with me a lot, but that's kind of like, I've read that a few times, but it hasn't been hanging out with me recently. Sorry, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, feel free to take it in your own direction, because I just hijacked my direction. It wasn't what Yehuda wanted.
It's so hard for me to pick like 5 top books or 6 top books of where I'm going. Like, again, it's like wherever I'm at right now. Like like Yehuda, like you were saying before, you go and talking to your books every day before I leave to work. I'm like looking at the bookshelf and I'm like, okay, just walk away, because I have already some books in the car, and plus you have your phone, so you're never short of books. I don't know.
Hey, I
Also,
guess, can I ask you a question then? Maybe.
Sure.
In your life, there must have been some things that really that lit you up and maybe changed you. Maybe there was a book of stories that like you immersed yourself in at some point, and it gave you chias, like on another level. Like I don't know. Maybe I'm looking for that. Like, what was a book that really lit you up when the first time you read it?
I think also that on some level, Yaakov, you're actually a very book guy, but there's also experiential. Like there are some experiences, and there's a lot of, I think that if we would talk about what, you know, instead of saying authors, you could talk about who are the core people that had, that changed the trajectory of our lives.
Okay, cool.
So I have to, number one is Reb Shlomo Carlebach. He changed my life. He's so old.
When were you first introduced to him?
The big red book of Shlomo stories is like next level. Yeah, it's there all the time. I have a small blue one that's Shlomo stories also. It has a lot of the same stories. Those are, pretty foundational, I guess, in what moved me. I don't know. It's like there's different time periods of what was going on, and it's tough to pick any one thing. Like I'm thinking like you're taking it back to what's been the big influencer. Like I'm living in the right now, and I'm like looking, when I look at my shelf, I'm like, wow, like I have no idea which direction and like what's going on. I'm also many times looking for like the shortest and heaviest club that I can pull off the shelf for at any given time, so that it can give me like a good chazak boost, But a lot of my books and things and Sfarim that I've picked up over time have really been influenced by Rav Moshe Weinberger, my Rebbe. Like, you know, when I've heard a Torah from him, I'll go out and buy the Sefer that's based, you know, that he shared the Torah from. I need it. I need that Sefer because it's connected to me. Most things I have a hard time reading the Hebrew Sfarim. So it's a little bit difficult, but I'll break my head through it because I'm just so connected to it. After it reached out to me, and it's like, you know, I have like a new connection. So it's happened, you know, that's happened many times. I don't know. I'm throwing it off the topic. It's not like I'm taking away.
No, we're free flowing here. We're perfectly good. We like jumping from topic to topic. And I think that this actually is a very interesting point because for me also a lot of things were driven are experience driven. And then I'll open up into things like, you know, like with, let's say, stories with Reb Shlomo, like you guys, you know, Yaakov mentioned Holy Brother, which was amazing. Lamed Vav, I love it. I love the Hasidic stories, especially the way Reb Shlomo teaches them. I wasn't into Reb Shlomo's music per se, like growing up, until I got into Reb Shlomo. And the way I got into Reb Shlomo was him telling stories that just transformed my experience. And then like the stories about Reb Shlomo, let's say in Holy Brother, they're mamish, like they're like the holiest Hasidic stories, and you get involved in him. But I think that also it's really much like the experience of meeting these people. Like when we're talking about a book, or when we talk about like Likutei Moharan, or, you know, these different books that we're bringing up, I feel that we've really met them. Like I know them, I've lived with them, and especially like people that I've been introduced to by somebody who I love and I care about. So like Rav Moshe Weinberger, you know, involved. And also it's interesting, Yaakov kept on talking about heroes. In one of the recent shiurim, I don't remember which one it was, maybe it was in Chaburas Yosef Tzadik, he was talking about like, who's your hero? And I was actually thinking, I was like, oh, we should put it on here. I think I was listening to it on Friday. And I was like, Mama's like, yeah. Who are your heroes? Yeah, who are our heroes? And who are the people that I really, and when Yaakov was going before, he's like, our hero. I kept on being, I was like, yes, like, you know, Matisyahu Kazak, he's my hero. I love him, you know? Like, I was that guy who showed up at Kutsk for the first time, wide-eyed and trying to like make sense of this new world. I was that guy that like, I was Reb Nassan, like the first time he showed up at Reb Nachman and learned Torah Vav. Like, I kind of feel like that story happened to me. But it didn't. It happened to him. But it's so alive inside of me, and I kind of think I kind of know what it was. But guess what? I was also, you know, Eliezer Eved Avram, traveling and to go to find a wife for Yitzchak. But I was also Rivka as she fell off the camel, and I was also Yitzchak, mamish, having an awesome wedding, just davening for my wife. Like, but and it's absurd, but that's what it is. But also, I was also the simple Jew, you know, like it's just that simple Yidala that came to America and just tried to just keep living that Jewish life, just keeping that link in the chain. And that's really what it is that we're all these links in these chains, and all these pieces really are coming together, creating an incredible tapestry that makes me alive and vibrant with Yiddishkeit. So we're trying to point out, like, you know, specific strands that are holding the tapestry together. And I think the reason why I'm excited to talk about this, and I love having this conversation, is because these things opened up the vibrancy of Jewish life that I'm living now. And really, you can pull on any one string and the whole thing, you know, gets excited. You know, you could just tap it anywhere and you hear a resonance. But these are the things that opened me up. I could even say, you know, I love Reb Tzadok HaKohen. But what really got me about Reb Tzadok wasn't even his books. It was someone else's book about Reb Tzadok that once I read it, suddenly I was just like, I love Reb Tzadok. And, you know, like it's wild how these things really open up for us. I think that going to Reb Shimon, being by the tzaddikim, sitting with friends, talking about Svarim, they open us up. And then when you're in the book, it's a real life experience. Anyhow, sorry for that little jumping off like that.
Ah, it's awesome. I totally dig what you were just saying. It's like, sorry, I have to bounce out for a second.
Sure.
I'll be right back.
It's funny.
Hey.
What was that? There was a story with Reb Tzaddik. The first time, I don't remember. I don't know who did he go to. I don't think it was the Chayza, right? It's too far apart.
No, yeah, he wasn't I don't think he was by the Chayza. No, but when he started traveling around.
Yeah.
To get the.
Yeah. Oh, maybe who was it by that he ended up by somebody for Shabbos, and they were like, "Oh, you're the famous Eloi from Lublin,"
Right.
and he didn't want to come. He didn't want to get involved in the. He didn't want to sit with the Rebbe. Not Friday night, not Shabbos days. Just stood in the back. By Shalosh Shudas, the lights are out, it's dark, and the Rebbe was speaking, and he just started yelling out, my heart's on fire.
I remember the story, but it's a little
you're so
blurry.
Connected to, yeah.
Well, you should know that I think also part of what makes me feel so connected to Reb Tzaddik was when I found out that our Zayda, the Zayda Shializer, lived in his house as an orphan. And I'll be honest with you, at first I thought that it wasn't possible because I didn't know how the dates worked out. But because Reb Tzaddik, what was he nifter, like 1900 or whatever, somewhere right around there.
Yeah.
And the Zayda Shializer was a little kid. But then when I found out that like he had orphans in the house and that was the whole story, suddenly I was so lit by like the fact that, like this is my Messiah, like well, my Zayda was his Talmud. So like I want to I know that I'm already connected. The truth is that I know we're really connected to everybody, but it's really about opening up and opening up these emotions and these feelings and these truths. And once you open them up, then Gavalt, we're just, we're lit.
Oh yeah.
I was thinking before, like as we're talking about this, I remember, when we were sitting in the basement by Abba, and I just come back from Eretz Yisrael, and we were like, like opening up Reb Moshe, and you listened. I think what was that first shir that you listened to it from Reb Moshe, the Shvat shir?
That I listened to.
When are you talking about?
In like 2009, I went back to America, and we were working downstairs, in the Raice household, and Abe and I had desks right opposite each other. And I don't even remember what happened, but I was like, yeah, you got to check out Reb Moshe Weinberger, man. Reb Moshe is amazing.
Oh, I'll tell you what happened. We were talking about Rabbi Nachman all day.
Right.
That's what it was. I went on. I had already been going to Rav Donnie Koren's
right.
shir, the Lakutei Moharan shir Monday night by Moshe Deutsch.
Right.
But I didn't really like, what was the connection? You guys were going every year for Rosh Hashanah. I didn't really know much about Rabbi Nachman other than, be happy. There's a lot of like heady dudes. And Reb Shlomo, my connection to a lot of Chassidus came from Reb Shlomo. It wasn't a matter of like, there was the singing and there was his music, but it was his Torah, the little Torah that he used to share over, which I was always like, what's going on? What's Ishbitz? Like, what's Rabbi Nachman? What's this? What's that? So I remember one day in the office, I put into Google Rabbi Nachman. And like one of the first things that came up was Rav Moshe Weinberger biographical shir on Rabbi Nachman. So I sat there. I was like, I wasn't really doing many sales. So I listened to Rabbi Nachman from Rav Weinberger, and it was the first time that I heard somebody speak about Torah, period, in this way. But then about like he starts off that share. He says, l'shem yichud kudshabrichu. It's like just the way that he was entering into it, and talking about how he's entering this heichal. And I was like, what's going on? I mean, I did learn like later on that Rav Weinberger, at the beginning of all the personalities, the different Hasidic masters that he teaches from, like when he started like a series about them, the first share was usually an introduction to the Rebbe's life, and with some taros from him. So that was like my real introduction to Rabbi Nachman and my introduction to Rav Weinberger. And from Rav Weinberger, he's taught me many, many things. Many, many things. So I would say that Hashem took me on my leash, and I got into Reb Shlomo. I thought, but I got really into Reb Shlomo here when we started the minyan, and listening to like many, trying to know all the nigunim, and then you get the stories and the Torah, and yes, that introduced me to Rabbi Nachman, and Rabbi Nachman introduced me to Rav Weinberger. And actually, when I saw Rav Weinberger a few months ago, when I saw him, I went, the last time that he was in with Rabbi Kramer, who should have a refuah speedily.
Amen.
And who's been also, when you mention like authors, Rabbi Chaim Kramer like has put together amazing, not just like the stories, the biography, like everything that he's put out is amazing. So he's a huge influence also for me. Like I have many books on that are from him. And okay, I'm rambling.
No, it's Kabbalah. It's mamash Kabbalah. It's funny because as you were saying all this, I was like, we really should be saying this and I think because people don't say it enough, that I feel like I want to make it clear. These are really all the people that introduced us to Hashem. I feel like
absolutely.
I feel like this is that just because we don't say it enough that way, like, and this whole journey has been for me and for I think all of us, has been this journey of even though we were born into a family of Shomer Torah mitzvahs, but you still have to meet Hashem. And you have to learn about Hashem, and you have to get to know Hashem, and it's something that we don't talk about enough. We're like in the search to do a mitzvah. It's like I'm connecting to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and these tzaddikim and these personalities, and there's so many different flavors of tzaddikim and personalities and people and colors, but Hashem is slowly weaving this wild tapestry in each one of our own lives, of Hashem saying, hey, let me introduce myself to you. I'm going to introduce myself to you through Rabbi Nachman, through Baal Shem Tov, through Ramchal, through all these different tzaddikim, to these live tzaddikim, dead tzaddikim, live tzaddikim, they're all the same. But like it's mamish, like this whole, and slowly we're opening up, we're waking up, we're pulling our heads off the pillow and looking up and being like, oh wow, it's a sunny day. There's a shining light. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is peeking through. He's talking to me. And mamish.
Right on.
That's incredible.
You were saying, I also to follow up on what both of you guys were saying about also through the nigunim, even more so, like a nigun is like the raw. A nigun is like the raw essence of the story. A story is like, we started out talking about like Sfarim and like those are like very detailed, and then we move from like the halachas and not halachas only, but like the Torahs. We move to the stories, which are like less explicit and more foundational, and then we moved all the way back to the nigunim. Because Abe, you were saying how the whole thing for you started with the nigunim of Rav Shlomo. That brought you. That was like the beginning of when you made a little chain. It was like the nigunim first, and the nigunim, like a nigun, a song, is a raw emotion, and it's like a story also, because like you have an up and a down, and you have a high part and a low part, and it's a story that we experience. And it's even less explicit than the stories, though. It's like the soul. It's like the panemius. It's the experience. It's the relationship. It's so that's cool. I don't know. I just had that thought.
I never understood the depth until like when Michael Most moved out and we stopped having a weekly day minyan, Shabbos day minyan with the Karlbach minyan for that 5 years or whatever. Being in Chabad, really, Chabad Hasidus is like a whole new level. It's actually interesting when you talk about introducing to Hashem. I know in the introduction to the Tanya from Rav Weinberger's Shiurim, he talks about how all other Hasidus, all the Hasidus of Chagas, kind of give over our relationship in our relationship from our point of view with Hashem, what we're supposed to do and like what the effects are. Even it goes very, very deep. However, he says Chabad Hasidus introduces us to Hashem. So it's like, oh, it's the other side. It's in a sense like, okay, let me, So when you mention Niggin, after starting and like learning different, or I should say, just being involved at the Chabad shul for those years, and learning different things from within Chabad, the Niggin is like the most powerful. Now I can understand, and it makes like that full circle back to what drew me in the first place. Now I not that I can understand, but like there's a little glimpse into what drew me in the first place. Where now it like kind of makes sense. It's like, okay, the ultimate level is Niggin.
Yeah. I want to share, I had an interesting experience getting drawn into the writings of Rebbe Leo Kitov. It was after I was married, I was learning in Kola by Rav Belsky, and middle of the day, we had a very short lunch break. And I used to lay down for a few minutes, close my eyes, so I'd get up early, and burning the candle on both ends. But by lunch, I was able to like catch a few Z's. So I'd go down there, and as I'm laying down, sometimes you need something to like mellow your brain out. So I'd always look for different books, and I found this English book, and it had no cover and no title page. It was just like, a ripped binding, just a bunch of pieces, and I flip it open, and I started reading. It was one of the English, volumes of Sefer HaTorah, Book of Our Heritage, and that brought me into a whole nother world of Rebbe Leo Kitov. Like that was an experiential. Like I remember that day. I remember laying down on the bed and just reading that, and then obviously went into all of his books. But those books also. So he has these books in the Lion's Den and Sharp as a Needle. Really, it's 2 volumes from like 5 volumes that he has in Hebrew. But those 2 volumes, they got translated to English, and the stories are there you go. Sharp as a Needle is all about Katsk and Pshischa. And in the Lion's Den is like mamash, the introduction, like, Tamidei Baal Shem Tov. And these stories are so alive. And stories always, they're just so alive. You read these stories about tzaddikim and you open them up. I don't know, man. Enter into that world. You enter into that world. It's there's nothing like it. There's mamish nothing like it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was talking to Reb Leibish the other day about this. How it's like so often like we know the Torahs, all the Torahs already. Like you learn the Torahs. I have a friend. Mosquito. 1 second. Got it. Boom.
Told you it's a good book.
Very often we learn Torahs but we don't really know how to apply them. But when we read stories, we can then see how to. It's really the Shemesh Talmidei Chachamim that very often we don't have. If you're not around, if you're not hanging out with tzaddikim, and it's not so easy to hang out with tzaddikim, so the stories are all we have to like show us how to live, and we have to. And the stories are deep, but like I was complaining to Reb Leibish actually that like I have a friend, or I have multiple friends. I've heard this from multiple friends that like we're talking about something going on in their life, and I'll say like, oh, but what about this? I'll say some Torah over, and they'll be like, yeah, I know that Torah. They're like, doesn't do anything for me. And it doesn't do anything for us because it's hard to take the eitzah out of the Torah very often, unless you have a tzaddik who like helps you apply it to your life. It's like b'saknenu be'eitzah taiva melefanecha is like Rabbi Nachman says. It's so important every day we say that. It's like really how to take the eitzah out of the Torah is not easy. And stories really give it to us, though. Like you were saying, it brings it to life in such a way that it could help us translate the Torah into eitzahs in our life. You have to be careful, though, because some of these stories are really wild. It's like, I don't know. Maybe that story don't take too much of that stuff. But when you read enough stories, at least, and you bring the Torah to life, it can really...
I feel like that's really the yichud of the yud and the hey, the mind and the heart. Like sometimes you could know something in your mind, but the biggest journey is not getting the information into your mind. It's getting the connection between the mind and the heart. And, the sun and the moon. And like there's so much many Torahs about it because that's really what it's all about. It's about making this yichud and this alignment. And I feel like that's so much of what, Abe mentioned it before, there's different modes of different learnings that you could do. Sometimes you need to upgrade the operating system that you're on. Sometimes you need to upgrade the hardware that you're working with. But sometimes you need to upgrade, like, how do I relate to it? How do I connect to it? And I feel like that was really what a lot of Hasidus was focusing on. And the more that we upgrade the understanding, the operating system, like if you just think, okay, how does Hashem work? What are the stories? What are the principles, so to speak, that the tzaddikim have taught us? It's very dry if you just learn it as principles. But as you begin to open up and connect more and more to Hashem, we need to constantly be upgrading also the operating software. So you have to upgrade the mind, but it has to constantly be bringing it into the heart, and not getting lost in mind avodah, and not being overly we have to constantly be upgrading all the different areas of our life, but the mind and the heart, bringing them together so that way we can live a life that's truly inspired and connected, but bringing those limud lidei maisa. And stories really do it because you see people that really have done it and worked their whole lives to bringing those teachings to life and making it alive. And that's why stories are so essential.
Yeah.
I want to jump. Can we jump into the next piece that we were jumping? I want to skip a little bit, even though I know that we had like kind of like an order of things that we were doing. I want to just maybe ask some other fun questions. Abe,
All right.
I want to hit you first. If you were going on a road trip, who are your top 3 tzaddikim that you want to go on a road trip with? And they don't have to all be together. I think these could be separate road trips. But who do you want to go with? And when I say road trip, I mean, have by your Shabbos table or be able to sit on a mountaintop somewhere or whatever it is, but to connect with,
Right. You pick your experience. Road trip is just like a mushel.
Wow. I would say the 2 of you. You're my tzaddikim.
Wow. Well, we've definitely road tripped.
Yeah.
And I don't think we're going to get to it today, but we got to do this again next week. And I really, really, really want to talk about Lag BaOmer. Just as an aside, we'll come back. Just we have to talk about Lag BaOmer because this year, it's not, people are not going to be there, or it's going to be, I don't know what's going to be Lag BaOmer in Miron this year. But
I'm going to be there.
I hope I'm going to be there too. But we don't know, man. So we need to get together and talk about Reb Shimon and what he means to us, and just reminisce some experiences that we had. But we'll get there. Maybe next week.
Yeah. Well, but I think that's really, I think that sometimes we go to the tzaddik, but when you can't, the tzaddik comes to you.
Well, there's a story. There's a good Litvish story if you want to hear one. In when Rosh Hashach was the Rosh Hashiva back in Panovich, so one of the Bacharim over there wanted to go to Miron for Lag Bomer. Nobody at Panovich went to Miron. It's the day you sit in yeshiva and learn. That's the great, So he went to Rav Shach and he says, I really want to go to Miron to be daven by the kever of Shimon. So Rav Shach looks at him and says, when you get to Miron, you going to be able to get up to the kever? He goes, no, probably not. There's a lot of people, but he goes, so he says, well, there's a lot of people, but you get, you're part of the crowd. So you get close enough. So he says, look, I want you to imagine that the line stretches from Reb Shimon's kever all the way here to Panovich. So you sit in the base of Medrash here, and you're by Reb Shimon.
You should know the Baal Shem Tov Mamish says the same thing. He says when you sit and you open a Gemara, you have to Mamish see those tzaddikim right in front of you, and they're Mamish talking. And he says, if you're not learning with that awareness that they're Mamish with you, from the lines Mamish reaching from there to here, beautiful.
It's a great story in so many levels.
Gewalt.
Wow.
Yeah.
So Yehuda, who are you road tripping with?
Who am I road tripping with? So this is a really good question, and I think that for me, I began to think who's a good road tripper? I think the best road tripper of all time is the Baal Shem Tov.
I knew you were gonna say that.
Is there anybody else that there are so many stories about him road tripping? Everything about him is road tripping. He's going here, he's going there. They're all jump on the wagon. Let's go. We're going with the Baal Shem Tov. Who knows? We're road tripping. So I think he's the road trip king. And I think from there, you can go any which way you want to go. But for me, I think it's got to be the Rupshitzer, because the Rupshitzer, I feel so connected to our holy Zaida, but his books, I'm not going to say meh, because his books are amazing and they're so deep, but I don't feel connected to him through his book the same way I feel connected to Rabbi Nachman through his book, or to the Pia Setzna through his books. I love the Rupshitzer books, but the Rupshitzer, I think my whole relationship with him is through stories, and maybe it's through blood. I don't know. I really don't understand anything about the Rupshitzer, and his Torahs are mostly non-understandable. It's a very weird relationship that I have with him, but I feel like I mamish get him. I'll even read stories, even the ones that we're only allowed to read certain times of the year, like Rupshitzer Knedlach. Dude, Rupshitzer Knedlach, they don't make the stories. You ask me to explain to you what they mean?
They make no sense.
There's no, but I can tell you, I heart understand these stories so deep. When he talks about
Yehuda, can you give us one Rupshitz Knedel story? I feel like this time of year is okay because it was just Shvishal Pesach. So it's still Isru Chag. It's still Isru Chag Pesach.
You only can tell or hear Rupshitz Knedlach if you had 4 kaisis by Sukkot Mashiach. Because I did it with my kids this year, and it's.
No, I remember last year's Shvishal Pesach sitting with you and all the chavra when we were all drunk as skunks and just laughing and laughing and laughing at the Rupshitz Knedel stories. Oh man,
Rupshitz Knedlach. They're just
right. They're Mashiach stories. They're stories of from another level. But you can't give us.
I'll tell you one. I'll share one story. I think this might be one of the most understandable ones. There was a Yidla who mamish, he didn't know anything. He didn't know anything about Yiddishkeit, barely. He knew that there's one God and that there's one Mashke, that's himself. And he knew his wife Chanala. And he knew that on Pesach, you eat knedlach. So he turns to his wife Chanala and he says, Chanala, can you do me a favor? Can you make the holy knedlach? And of course, Chanala goes and she mamish. She's, getting to the end of Pesach, she sweeps the floor and she takes all the crumbs of the matzahs and every bit of matzah that she could find and she puts it in and she squishes them together, and she puts in a little schmaltz, and she mamish is crying, and the tears are falling into the knedlach, and she's like, I'm mamish making knedlach for you, Hashem, and for Mashka, like this is going to be the holiest. And she goes and she looks around for the pots, and she sees she's got small pots, big pots. She's like, no, none of these pots are going to work. I'm going to get the huge pot that I use for washing the clothes, and that's the only one that's going to be used. It's a huge pot, and she brings it in, schleps it, she puts it on the fire, fills it up with water, puts the knedlach in, and she brings them this huge pot filled with knedlach, and she brings it to Mashka, and Mashka sits down, and he looks at these knedlach, and he goes, oh, these knedlach are amazing. And he starts eating 1 knedel, 2 knedel, 3 knedel, 4, and he's eating these knedlach, and he just keeps on going, and you can imagine this pot is filled, and she's just like mamish, you know, she can't even read Hebrew, but she's like just crying, her husband's eating knedlach on Pesach, this is like the highest thing in the world. And he eats them so many knedlach that his stomach is literally bursting. And suddenly he starts looking at the knedlach, and he's like, you know, no longer smiling anymore. He looks at them and picks up another knedel, shoves it in, swallows it. Finally, his stomach is hurting so much. He looks at these knedlach and he goes, murderers, enough of you. You're just trying to kill me. Wait, how many knedlach are here? And he takes the whole pot and he throws them out the window. And his wife kind of looks harsh. She goes, what's going on? And he's sitting there, they're murderers. And she threw them out the window. And of course, Chanala goes outside and she picks up every last knedel and wipes them off and puts them back in the pot and brings them all back inside.
Give out.
Oh, that story gets me every time.
Wild. It's wild. You should know that I'll tell you one more. By one of the Ravshitzer Einiklach, they used to bring to the Ravshitzer and to the Jikaber, to all the kids. There was this thing that they would do. They would bring, all the Hasidim would all bring a couple knedlach, and they'd bring them for the Rebbe on Shvi Shel Pesach. The truth is, Reb Chaim of Sanz also, he used to come and he'd be like, I'm so excited to eat the knedlach, like we have to quickly daven Marav. Of course, it took him to like 12 o'clock till he made Kiddush on Shvi Shel Pesach, Achron Shel Pesach, sorry. But like, he'd mamish be like, come on, we have to go fast, we got to eat knedlach. But anyhow, so by one of the Ravshitzer Einiklach, I don't remember which one it was, they bring all the knedlach. And now one of the guys noticed that when one of the women, when she was making the knedlach, she was crying and it went in the knedlach, and he was like an istinus, like it grossed him out a little bit. The fact that her tears went into the knedlach.
All right, we know some Ravshitzer Einiklach who are shtickle istinus.
Exactly. So this Rebbe is over there, and they bring all the knedlach into him, and he sees this chassid, and the chassid is looking to make sure that he doesn't get from those knedlach, And so the Rab, this Einikla, this Ravshitzer, we'll just call him a Ravshitzer because he is. He grabs a knedel, and like before the guy could think, he just shoves it into his mouth and covers the guy's mouth, so he just has to eat it. And he goes, "That'll teach you for not looking in places that you shouldn't." You don't look at the holy women when they're making knedlach. Anyhow, it's not like, but the stories they're just wild. But that's the Ravshitzer. So I think for me, going on a road trip, I want a road trip with the Ravshitzer. There's an awesome story, one of my favorite Hasidic stories, also about another mashke, but it's called Mashke Couldn't Pay the Rent. Anyhow, the whole story is an interesting story, but the cool thing is that this mashke is on the way to Rebbe Elimelech of Lezhensk, and he bumps into 3 Hasidim. Now the 3 Hasidim that he bumps into is the holy Chayza, and the holy Ravshitzer, and the holy Rimanover. And we only know in the story what the Chayza was saying, but like I know that if we were there, we would have been on the floor listening to what the Ravshitzer was saying. So that's really what I'm like looking for. And I want a road trip with the Ravshitzer. I want to see him cracking people up. I want to see him, being Mesameach Chassan V'Kala, like to the point that all the angels are by him, and Gevalt, all the Tikkun Chatzais in the world, all the tears in the world, there's no room for them because it's by the Ravshitzer, it's just, Ois V'Chedva B'Mkaimai. And so that's the second one. My third one, I don't know. It's really tough. I kind of want to say Leo, you know, he's also road tripping all the time, and he's mamish there for every single yidala, you know, that needs a pick me up on a road trip. And but I don't know. There's so many tzaddikim. But I think Elio Navi. I just the more that I think about him, Daniela actually told me last night. We on Matzah Shabbos we talk about Elio Navi. So still Matzah Shabbos, right? And
Bet. I could tell you a story about how even for us it's still Matzah Shabbos, but go on.
Well, with Abe, we're all, this kashrus gadol right now. So it says that when Hashem created the world, he asked all the angels, says, should we create man? And there was one angel that said, yes. And that angel was Eliyahu Hanavi. And Eliyahu Hanavi said, not only that, but I'm willing to go down whenever you want me to go down to be with those people, because I know how valuable every yidla is. And Hashem said, okay, I'm going to send you down to that world again and again. And mamish, when I heard this, I was like, whoa. And this is mamish, we say, Eliyahu Hanavi Zachar Latov. Like, he's the only one that mamish, like, turned, like, what?
Ah, so that's why we call him Elio Malach Habris, because he's a Malach.
He's a Malach.
Ah, cool.
I never heard this before. And it was like, it was so, but I just mamish got so warm and fuzzy. I'm like, he's mamish, I'm thinking about it, like, he's hustling around all the time to be everywhere for us. And he's putting on any costume that'll work for us. Like, he's such bittul. It's wild. Anyhow, so I think those are my 3 road trippers. All right, sorry for long road tripping.
No, it's awesome.
Who's your road trippers?
Okay, who's my who do I want to trip with? Well, because you asked me, I had time to think about it, and so I started thinking, like, which tzaddikim. Right away, I started thinking about which tzaddikim do I like have I heard stories about them on the road. So obviously Baal Shem Tov, as you mentioned. Like, I definitely would love to get on that wagon and experience that, what's it called again? Kfitzas Haderech, and just end up somewhere and have some kind of crazy trip. The other one I thought of was Reb Shlomo. I want a road trip with Reb Shlomo. So many stories I've heard. He was also always traveling everywhere, and everywhere he went, he shlomoed the situation. Like, he was able to just connect. I want to just be with him and watch him connect to people, on the road, going one place to the next and just connecting to everyone we meet. I want to be involved in that. So, and the third one is Reb Nassan. And the reason why is because of the stories of, he was always on the road. But there's one story that I absolutely love that Reb Nassan writes in his memoirs called Yimei Maranat, where he talks about how on his trip to Eretz Yisrael, it was just him and one other guy was with him. And they ended up getting on a boat to go across the Black Sea from Odessa to Istanbul, I don't know how you pronounce that. And there was just the two of them and a whole bunch of sailors carrying a cargo. And once they got out into the sea and everything was good, so the sailors all broke out their instruments and they started playing music, like sailor music. And they all started dancing and drinking. And Reb Nassan just danced with them. He writes about how I just danced with them. And they were happy about whatever they were happy about. And I was happy about being on the way to Eretz Yisrael. But what I loved about the story so much was, like, when you read Reb Nassan's writing, his memoirs, it comes across as just like a super genuine, very real, a person that you would love to hang out with. That's what he comes across as, the way he writes. And just the image of him, like, you don't picture, normally when you picture tzaddikim, you don't, like we do, because I guess we've heard a lot of Hasidic Maises, but normally when you picture like big tzaddikim, you don't picture them like hanging out with a bunch of sailors on a boat and who knows what kind of music they were playing and he's dancing with them. But that Reb Nassan was. And I feel like probably be pretty cool to road trip with him and get into situations with him. And I want to give one more honorary mention to our buddy Menachem Nuchem the Holy Chernobler from Beit Shemesh, that I have road tripped with him many times, and he's definitely one of my top choices to road trip with because he always makes everything like Shlomo'd everything, and the Rav Shit's everything. Menachem Nuchem's everything.
True that. I think that what Abe said before about that was like what you want a road trip. And I'll tell you, could be we just need to do some more road trips. Like when you go to Rabbi Nachman, your mom is road tripping with Rabbi Nachman. You know, when you're on the way to the Baal Shem Tov, your mom is in a Baal Shem Tov story. And when you're on the way to Reb Shimon, Gewalt, we're on the way, you know? So I mamish feel that. I feel that very deeply. And we've had some really awesome road trips together.
No doubt. I'm looking forward to the next one.
Amen.
We definitely covered a lot of ground tonight or today, wherever we are.
I knew I'd make a good choice going with the two of you because now I've just road tripped with the best. You know, there's nothing like riding with the best. Hanging out with the Rupshitzer, Gewalt, man, Reb Shlomo, Reb Nassan. I'm in. Elio and Avi. Gewalt.
Okay, you guys, here's an interesting thing that you want to do. I have this story from last week's parsha, which is just kind of humorous and interesting and a little bit wild. And maybe I'll read you guys a story and tell me what you think. Like, give me some knee-jerk reactions, gut reactions.
All right. I'm in. Take us away,
so
bro.
This is Parsha Shmini, last week's Parsha. So there was these two Hasidim that the Rebbe passed away. So they needed a new Rebbe. So they said, you know what? Let's go to a male from Parmishlan. Let's see if he could be. If we've heard amazing things about him. Let's see if he'll be a good Rebbe, and if his Chevra will be a good Chevra. So they got to Parmishlan on Erev Shabbos Parsha Shmini. And they got there around the time of Adlakas Neris. They got there like really late. You know, it was ended up being a long journey. They didn't have time to prepare a place to stay, and so they went right away to the Beis Medrash of Reb Meir. And after davening, they hung around waiting for someone to invite them. So two Balabatim invited them for a Shabbos Suda. Each one invited one of them. So they got invited to two different places. So one of the fellows, he didn't eat a lot. He just wasn't a big eater. So when this chassid saw that he wasn't eating, he was embarrassed to eat, even though he was so hungry. The other fellow, the other balabas who invited his friend, he had no problem eating, but he wouldn't cut up all the challah. He cut up a piece. Every time someone wanted a piece, he would cut a piece. So he kept on like cutting himself another piece, and he'd say, "You want a piece?" But the guy was embarrassed to say that he wanted more, because matriach the balabas to cut more. So he felt embarrassed. He felt uncomfortable. So he barely ate. Afterwards, so they're both hungry. They come out of their meals and they're both hungry. They had a long journey that day and they're starving and there just wasn't enough to eat. They were embarrassed. So afterwards, they went to the Rebbe's Tish, and the Rebbe was there, and it was like it just went on for ages, and there wasn't really anything to eat there either. Finally, they went back to find a place to sleep. Someone hooked them up with a bed somewhere, and they asked, like, maybe you have something to eat. And the guy who was hooking them with the bed, he's like, I don't really have anything to eat. I'm really sorry. I gave them like a little snack or something, but it wasn't really much. So in the morning after davening, they were invited back to the same balabatim. And again, the same thing happened. One guy was embarrassed to eat because his host wasn't eating. And one guy was embarrassed to ask because the host wasn't cutting more challah. So after the meal, they're still hungry. They came back from Mincha in the afternoon. And so they went back to Rameir Parmishlan's Beis Medrash. And he wasn't there. So they thought, the Rebbe must be learning Torah in his room. So they went into his house. And the Gabbai says to them, the Rebbe is out in the chutzner if you're looking for the Rebbe, Rameir. So they went out and they see him in the chutzner, and he's telling the Mesharis, the Goita, to give food to the geese and to the birds, the chickens. He's like overseeing the Goita, giving Goita. I'm using that lashon. It's not maybe a lashon that we should use nowadays. It's a little bit. The servant woman, the serving woman. Sorry. And he's like dealing with the chicken feed and the geese. And afterwards, the Rebbe says, all right, no, let's go to mincha. These guys are wondering what on earth is going on. The Rebbe hasn't said any Torah the whole Shabbos. And this is Zachanas for mincha. And they're starving, so like they can't handle it. They're annoyed and hungry, and nothing's working out properly. So they're like, we're not going to Shal Shidduch with the Rebbe. And they went back to their Balabatim. But the Balabatim weren't there. They were by the Rebbe. So they're like, all right, fine. We have to go to the Rebbe for Shal Shidduch. So they go. When they walk in, it's already getting dark. They walk in, they're in the back. And they hear the Rebbe saying, where are these two Hasidim? Where are these two Avreichem that are looking for a Rebbe with Ruach HaKodesh? Nobody answers. Silence in the Beis Medrash. So he asks again. He says, where are they? No? Why are they hiding? The Beis Medrash is deathly silent. You could hear a pin drop. The third time he says, if they don't come up now, they're going to really regret it. So sheepishly, the two Avrecha make their way up to the front, these two guys. And Rameir says, Shalom Aleichem. No. Where'd you eat the Suda Shabbos? They said, oh, by Shmerel and Beryl. So the Rebbe calls, no, Shmerel and Beryl, come over. He says, I want to tell you something. In the Torah, we have a mitzvah of Achnasas Orchim. But there's ways of how you act with guests. When you invite a guest, first of all, the balabas has to cut a lot of challah. She'd cut up the whole challah and make sure there's tons of cut challah on the table. So that way the guest won't feel embarrassed to cut a piece of bread himself. He says, but there's a second step. Even if you cut a lot of bread, you have to eat also. Because if you don't eat, then your guest might be embarrassed to eat. So you got to cut a lot of bread and you got to eat. He says, where do we see this in the Torah? It's in Parsha Shmini, in the Parsha this week. It says, Es hachazir ki mafris parsa. Parsa means you cut pieces, right? Persat lechem, a piece of bread. V'hu geira lo yigar. But he doesn't eat himself. He's not chewing his own cud. Tamehu lachem. So if you cut bread, but you don't eat, mafris parsa, you cut the bread, but not male geira, tame. It's no good. And gamal, male geirahu, he eats, uparsa inenu mafris, but he doesn't have split hooves, he doesn't cut up the challah. Tame. Says, what's tahar? Only you have to be mali geira, you have to eat yourself, and mafrise parsa, you also have to cut up slices of challah for everyone at the table. And now he says, these guys Nebuch, they're starving. He says, Chevra, bring food, bring. They start pulling out bread, herring, gefilte fish, chrein, lots of good food. These guys sitting, and then while they're sitting and eating, Rameir starts saying Torah. And as he's saying the Torah, they suddenly, like mamish, the most deepest Torah, and suddenly they realize why the Rebbe was feeding the birds. It all connected. It was a very deep Torah. Unfortunately, we don't have it, but that's what it was. And then Matzah Shabbos, they're sitting down and they look at each other and go, I think we found the Rebbe. I think we found the Rebbe with Ruach HaKodesh. That's the story. What do you say? L'chaim, l'chaim.
L'chaim, l'chaim.
Nice story. Hey, what's your take?
My take?
I feel like the
Can I ask you a question, maybe? Can I ask you a question on the story?
Yeah, I feel like the story is pretty straight up.
It is pretty, yeah, I guess. But when I read it, I don't know, part of it bothered me. I don't know. I guess it bothered me that the Rebbe called out these guys in front of the whole Shalashidus over there. I guess maybe they needed to be called out because their guests were starving. I just felt bad for them, I guess. I don't know. They didn't do it on purpose, and they got called out in front of the whole Shalashidus. I don't know. I felt bad for them. That was my first thought when I finished the story.
I feel like all four of them, but all three parties got called out. First of all, you have these guys that are making a big deal about they're coming because they're coming to test the Rebbe to see if he has Ruach HaKodesh,
And like, is he good enough for us? And this and that and the other. And he's like, "Well, you testing me? Like, what is this? You know?" That's first of all. And second of all, and these two, machnise arach, they're like thinking that they're such like big machnise arachim, like, get a hold of yourself. Like you're in your, do your avodah. Like if you want to do it for real. It's not easy always, and sometimes it means going out of your comfort zone. And it's not about doing, having guests to make you feel good that you're having guests. You got to do it. You got to be like thinking about the others. And here, I think all three parties were kind of like thinking only about what they wanted to get, as opposed to thinking about what they needed to give.
It's interesting. Yeah, it is interesting because I guess this fits into the genre of stories of testing the Rebbe. Like it goes back even to the Gemara times. I think there's a Gemara that when Shmuel was coming to Bavel, so Rav sent one of his Talmidim to like sniff him out. The Gemara used that lashon, like to sniff his barrels, like as if he's a barrel of wine. You have to smell if he's sour or if he's good to drink from. It was like a whole funny story. So like you see that there's an Indian of, you have to go. There's definitely I didn't feel so negative about these Hasidim I didn't look at them negatively or like them as doing something wrong, even though I should have. Like you bring a good point. Obviously, the fact that they went through this rough time meant that they weren't doing something perfectly 100% right. But I didn't think of that, so I didn't notice that because I thought like, of course, when you go to a Rebbe, you have to see, is he right for me? Is the right place for me? And if it's not, like, how else do you know? Well, why should you go to this Rebbe over that Rebbe? You have to go and check it out. You have to go see, like, if we just go and it's just whatever, so then why should I go back?
Right. It's not like they could go on to Torah anytime and just like download a shir.
Exactly.
They had to go check it out. They were like, all right, listen, let's check it out. Let's go Friday night. We'll see what's going on. The question is, why didn't the Rebbe give over Torah Friday night?
That's another good question. Because as I was reading the story, I assumed that there was Torah. Then at the end of the story, it says, and he hadn't said Torah the whole Shabbos.
Right. Like,
really?
where did that come from?
Why not? Yeah.
Right.
What were they doing at the Tish the whole night? I guess they were singing, maybe.
Right. But also, it's an interesting thing is that there are different types of tzaddikim. There are some tzaddikim that, and could be Rameir like saw that he was coming. By the way, there are a lot of stories like this, like, coming to the Chayzer or coming to, different tzaddikim. And then they were like, they came there and like, they just said stories. Even with the Baal Shem Tov, there are times he came and different tzaddikim came and they wouldn't say any Torah lach. And even with Reb Nassan's father, right? You said over a story about that, where his father, right? His father was getting into Hasidus, father-in-law was getting into Hasidus, but he went around to go see if like he should get into Hasidus, and then he like when he showed up, like they weren't saying Torah. And then when he left, like the Rebbe said, "Oh, I forgot who it was."
No, where Nassan's father-in-law, you went, and he said, like, when he went, these Hasidim were speaking against these guys, and these are speaking against, and he says, "I said they're both right. They're both no."
So I'm mixing up, but there's a different story of like a tzaddik, chashuva, like a real, somebody, and he was, put together, and he went and he saw they weren't saying any Torah. Maybe it was by Rechil Michal Zlachev. And when he left, all the Chevra asked, like, "Why do you say Torah?" He goes, because he's mamish doing his avodah that he needs to do. I don't want him to feel like he's missing out on something over here, and I don't want him to join us. Like he needs to keep on doing what he's doing. Like sometimes they do. Like I think that maybe over here, Rameir was showing, like it's not about the Torah that you're going to say. You have Ruach HaKodesh is to be able to be sensitive to another Jew.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, he did show them the Ruach HaKodesh. Like he smacked them with the Ruach HaKodesh. Like, yeah, right. I have it, and it's spades. But
not for Torah. Meaning, I'll use my Ruach HaKodesh to be able to feed the behemoths.
But that was a part of the story, though. It was like a whole thing, how he said such a deep Torah, and he included all the things in it. I don't know.
Oh, he did say that?
Yeah, that when he said Torah B'Shal Shudas, when they were eating, he said Torah B'Shal Shudas, and they understood why he fed the birds, Al Pisoid. I don't know. I'll tell you my favorite part of the story. I just like the play on words and the vart and the pasuk.
Yeah.
Mafrisi Mali Geir Mafrisi. That's a good one. It's an easy way to remember. Like now you have guests. cut the challah up. This week, like I was cutting the challah today, and one of my boys was like, "Ava, cut."
If you could just turn the mic a little bit down to you, because you cut out a little bit here and there.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll get up close and personal.
Just pull it up.
All right.
Gewalt. Abe, there are so many different types of tzaddikim, and like there are different flavors and different styles and different things. So, what's your take? What's your thoughts on different roles of tzaddikim?
What do you mean by that, Yehuda?
I mean that there are different. I mean, I'll tell you, Rabbi Gerzi's been saying a little Torah, like he's saying, there's a difference between the tzaddik emes, the tzaddik hadar, and the paisik hadar. The paisik hadar is telling you what you got to do. The tzaddik emes is there really to help the people, and the tzaddik hadar, I don't remember exactly how he put it out, but there's different like roles. Meaning some tzaddikim, it's like we need to go and we need to work with them. Or sometimes the tzaddikim are like lowering themselves down, or sometimes the tzaddikim are on a pedestal. Some tzaddikim are like mamish malchustik, and they're like, like rebbish, mamish rebbish. And then you have some people that are, some tzaddikim that are mamish just like, with the people, just like down with the chevra, and like, go like on the travels with the with the people. Some of them are like mamish saying Torah all the time. Some of them never say Torah, like unless you realize it's always Torah. But they're just being like much more just like with the flow.
Right, and then I guess there's tzaddikim who switch roles also, who at some point were one role and then played another.
Right. I don't know. So it's like interesting. Like, what was Reb Meir of Premishlan's like role over here? You also have rich versus poor. You have like rich tzaddikim, poor tzaddikim. Some that were like giving away every penny. Some that were like ma'asif kesef.
Actually, I never really read that much about Reb Meir, so I'm kind of curious.
Right. The one thing we know about him is that he always spoke in third person. Right. He always called himself Meirel. Meirel is gonna. Hashem, Meirel needs help. He's like the
Rebbe Reb Zusha. Yeah. I don't know what you mean, like the roles of Rebbes. The role of the Rebbe today seems to be like very different. But it's interesting that I was talking to some guy from Williamsburg. He told me that I think from Visionitz, maybe there's like 14 Rebbes now. And It's really because I guess when you have so many people, it's much harder to have the personal connection. I think that a Rebbe is supposed to have like a personal connection with people. And sometimes when it gets too big, I guess, it's like very hard. It's very interesting for me that, Rav Moshe Weinberger during the coronavirus, like with a lot of his Zoom meetings, I mean, forever, he's always talking about us and the chevra, and like one thing that sticks out, I remember early on hearing a shir from him where he was like, I'm not a Rebbe, you're not Hasidim, and we're not like in the traditional way. However, he's more of a Rebbe than any Rebbe that I can know. So it's just that maybe the role, if that's what you mean, the role of a Rebbe might be that it just has kind of changed a little bit. Brings to mind that story about the Rebbe who chased after the guy. The guy came for, I don't remember which Rebbe it was. Guy came for a bracha for his son, right? His son was very sick, and he said, Rebbe, please, you got to help me. And he said, I'm so sorry, there's nothing, like mamash, the gates are closed. So the guy, this poor guy, sets off heading home, mamash dejected, and he's in this thing cruising along. All of a sudden he hears the horses coming. Wait. And the Rebbe comes and he says, I'm so sorry. He said, I can't do anything to help you, but I can certainly cry with you. And when they sat down and cried, at some point he just like jumped up and he was like, he said, okay, he left. The Rebbe left, I think. The guy comes home and he's like, and his wife is like, what happened? I can't believe it's mamash a miracle. The Rebbe, whatever. And he's like, what are you talking about? The Rebbe told me he can't do anything. And as it turns out, that just the fact that they were connecting on a deep place like that, you know.
Yeah,
So
it's true.
the role of a Rebbe.
Yeah,
Also
I
brings
agree.
to mind the story of they say over a story that it could be that it was with the Ropshitzer that they were traveling. I don't know who he was with some other Chassidim, and they were traveling along, and they had no money to get to the Rebbe, whoever they were going with. I heard this from the Ropshitzer. I was trying to figure out like at what point it was that he didn't have the funds to travel to a Rebbe, and who he might have been traveling with, but you never know. So as they were traveling along, this is before he became known as anything, and they come to a town. They realize, like, look, we don't have any money. We need some travel money. So they decide that, look, you're going to pretend to be a Rebbe. We're going to go into the town. We'll no. A few of the Hasidim go ahead, and they tell them, okay, here come the Rebbe's coming. You never heard of the Beit Shemesh Rebbe? I'm like, what do you mean? He's on his way. Oh, Gavalt, you got to prepare something for him, whatever. And he comes inside, and this guy's pretending to be a Rebbe. They come, the richest guy in the town takes them in, and they have a big feast. And then he tells them, listen, my son is very sick. My young child, very sick. Please, Rebbe, I need the bracha. So he says, he thinks for a minute. He says, take me in, let me stay there. He goes inside. A couple of minutes later, he comes out. He says, okay, they move on. They're on their way. They go to the Rebbe. On the way back, they're doing the same shtick. And they go to the same town. And the rich guy comes out to greet him. He's like, Gewalt, Rebbe, thank you so much. And he throws this big Suda, and all the other Hasidim are looking. They're like, what is going on? And so they ask him, after this whole thing goes by, this guy, he mamish healed this wealthy guy's son. They travel on and they say, dude, what happened? He's like, I went into that room and I just said to Hashem, you know that I'm nothing. And all they want to do is just connect to you. So for the sake of them and their connection to you, take care of this child. It's not my fault. I'm only doing whatever it is that I have to do to get by. Gewalt, sometimes you have to take that role. Sometimes every one of us has to take that role in our different things. So, Yehuda, you're going to road trip with Elio and Avi, and your mama's going to be Elio and Avi. Like, that's your road trip. You never know when you're going to be the Elio.
Actually, it's one of the best. That's one of the best Baal Shem Tov Elio and Avi stories.
It is a good one. Dude, I was once tzaddik. I mean, a rebel or whatever. Like, it happened. Sometimes it just happens. You don't realize. I didn't actually do anything. I mean, let me just tell you straight up. I didn't actually do anything in the story, but someone else treated. I'll tell you the story quickly. I was by the Baal Shem Tov in Mezhebej, and I was sitting there. I was sitting in the OL. I was sitting next to the Apterov, and there was another fellow there, a chassid from seems like a bar park type guy, like an American chassid. He was there with his son, and he was by the Baal Shem Tov. He was davening, it, tefillin on, I don't know. And I was chilling. It was really peaceful and quiet. I was in my corner by the Apterov. I think he's our Zaidi, by the way. Once figured out somewhere that he's our Zaidi also. Anyway, the door opens to the OL, and this woman sticks her head in. And she's like, can I come in? And I'm like, yeah, of course. Come on in. No problem. There's no mechitza there. There's no separate men-women section. It's basic farce. You just come, you go to the kever. So she comes in, and she's, there's a lot of tzaddikim there, but she's like, can I go over to Baal Shem Tov's kever? She asked me. I said, sure, no problem. Of course. So she goes over there, and then this bar park guy, whatever, I shouldn't say bar park, but whatever, this American chassid starts bugging out. He's like, these women, and then he starts bugging out. He's like getting all tzahitzt, getting all uptight. So she got all nervous, and she didn't know what to do. So I waved her. I said, come sit over here. There was a chair next to me. I said, come sit. She was an older woman, middle-aged woman. I said, come sit. I said, what's going on? And she says, well, my daughter is in Israel, and she's giving birth now, and she's having trouble, and she's having a difficult labor, and I want to daven, but this guy is getting upset. He won't let me go over to the Baal Shem Tov's kever. So I said, don't worry. said, you're in the ohel. The Baal Shem Tov's soul fills up the whole ohel. So you're mamish by the Baal Shem Tov right now. It's all good. And I said, anyway, over here, right next to the After Rav is also big tzaddik, but you get all the tzaddikim. You're connected to all the tzaddikim here. So I said, come sit and we'll say some Tehillim. Let's say Tehillim. So I gave her a Tehillim and we sat there and said Tehillim together. And then I left. I didn't know what happened. I went out. And then I came back like a little while later. I was walking back towards, maybe I went to the mikvah. I don't know what I did. I was walking back towards the Achnasas Orchim building, and she's sitting outside on a bench and she says, it worked. You're amazing. And she's like, I'm like, what happened? She says, my daughter gave birth and the baby's okay. And she starts pulling out money and stuffing it in my bag, like grivnas and dollars and shekels. And I'm like, I didn't do anything. We just sat together and davened. She's like, no, you're amazing. And she's pulling out, and I had no money to get back to the airport. So she's stuffing my bag with money and I'm like, stop. And she's like, no. That's the story. That was awesome.
Wow. Wow.
And I was like, I really didn't do anything. I promise you. But that's the thing. We all all we got to do is be nice to those around us, be a mensch, be a little bit at lichtig, and then Hashem just operates how he wants to operate. Yeah.
It's true. I think that in that situation, but you mamish did everything. It's like the story that Abe was saying, what does it mean to be a rebbe? What does it mean to be a tzaddik? On the most basic level, it means that you're up for connecting people to Hashem, and you connect Hashem to the moment, and tzaddik be'emunasa yichya in that state. And like when you're by the tzaddikim, when you became the channel for her to be able to connect to all the tzaddikim in that place. You became the channel for her to be able to connect to the Tehillim and to connect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And as soon as we do that, we open up the gates. And I think that's what a Rebbe is. That's why I think I mamish think for Moshe Weinberger is mamish my Rebbe. Besides the fact that he's also taught me so much, and I think we all have learned so much from him. And it's funny that we all feel so connected to him, but he barely knows us. But or if he knows us at all, I think he knows Abe and Yitzi.
He knows Bensi.
He knows Bensi. Yeah, Baruch Hashem, I was zeicha to meet with him also once, one-on-one, which was huge.
Right, I met him a few times, but I don't think he'll recognize me now.
Yeah, every time I'm always like him. I was always in bad. Every time I always see him, I just try to anyhow, it brought me when you were saying that story about the Baal Shem Tov and everything. It brought me to thinking about different tzaddikim that we met and that we knew and that we know in our lives, and I think that. It wouldn't make sense that the first time that Abe's on with us and not bring up Rabbi Schweitzer. For me, that was the first real tzaddik that I ever saw. And to me, Rabbi Schweitzer is the prototype of just straight tzaddik for me.
As I was mentioning before we went live, L'chaim to Rav Badush, who was another big tzaddik that hung out. I shouldn't say hung out, but davened by Rabbi Schweitzer. So that was.
But that was the greatness of Rabbi Schweitzer's shul, that hanging out and davening were one and the same thing.
That was that whole shul. That shul is is the dugma for me of what a minyan is supposed to look like. Just first of all, Rabbi Schweitzer. Rabbi Schweitzer was really epic. Mind blowing how epic he was.
Look, I feel like if you're going to bring up Rabbi Schweitzer, we really need to introduce him to anyone who's listening, because it's
I just want to say why it triggered me. Just because the reason why it triggered me is that when you were by the Baal Shem Tov, you had no problem telling the woman to come in. It's it makes sense, at least for us, makes so much sense. And how by Rabbi Schweitzer's shiva, when we went to where was it, in Ashdod, we just ended up talking to the Rebbitzin, and there's a certain
we didn't end up, she called us in to the women's section to talk to her,
right? But it's just classic. That's just the way it is, that you bring it in. And that was Rabbi Schweitzer. Rabbi Schweitzer was just, okay, go. You can introduce Rabbi Schweitzer.
Okay, I think let's each say one thing like that you feel like sticks out of Rabbi Schweitzer that makes him great. I'll tell you my thing, which feeds into what you were just saying, that in Muncie, in Rabbi Schweitzer's community, women didn't drive cars, right? And a chassid would never get in a car if there's a woman driving. Yet Rabbi Schweitzer would always get in the car whenever mommy stopped to pick him up, and she would drive him all over the place. He's like an old Belzer chassid, alta Belzer chassid. And he's like just, he had no car and he's walking wherever he's going, and mommy would stop for him every single time, and he would get in the car and be appreciative, and he always went with her.
Wait, you gotta share how the whole thing came out. The whole thing came out was because one time mommy stopped to pick up one of the Schweitzer boys. I don't remember which one it was, and he was with his friend, and the Schweitzer boy didn't want to get in, and his friend goes, "What? You're not going to get in? Your father gets in." And mommy was like shocked, and she was like, "What?" And that's when we found out, and that's why like Rabbi Schweitzer was doing it. That's why like I remember we were talking about it. I remember Abba was explaining like, "Listen, Rabbi Schweitzer's getting in the car because he doesn't want to hurt anybody's feelings. Like if he wouldn't get in the car, mommy would be like, 'Why aren't you getting in?' Like seriously, like So it was a question, meaning even though in that community they wouldn't do that, but he was not going to be mavater on someone else's feelings and to God forbid hurt somebody else. That was Rabbi Schweitzer. I remember, I have a few funny stories, but I remember being a kid, being locked out of the house one time and not knowing what to do. I was really little. It's probably like when I first started taking a bus to school by myself. And I came home and nobody was home, and I just didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to go. And I went across the street to Rabbi Schweitzer, and he just brought me in, and he gave me a chocolate wafer bar. And I just remember him taking such good care of me, and I was crying, and he was just like patting me on the back and talking Yiddish. I'm like, I didn't know Yiddish.
He's like, "What the heck do I do? I don't know."
He was so warm. He was the warmest, like amazing. I always felt so connected to him. Abe, what do you got? You got a story for us? Thought?
I actually don't have I can't say that I have like a story that sticks out. I mean, Rabbi Schweitzer was just like the warmest man to everyone that came in. It was a very interesting shul, eclectic, a lot of interesting characters, but he was like warm to all the characters. And the truth is that his seat in the shul was at the head. It was like not at the head, but it was like in front of the loud table. Right. And he never got upset about anything. Like, so other people used to like try to quiet down the table, but like he always just like everyone that came in, no matter how late you came in, he was always right there, unless he was davening for the Yamud. But usually, by Musaf already it was Shayish. And but he always had like his warm smile. And he greeted everyone, like even if he wasn't speaking, but it was like his smile, and he was just warm to everyone.
Yeah, him dancing on Simchas Torah.
Yeah,
just trucking the whole time.
Yeah.
His seat was also right by the door on the way in. When you walked in, you had to walk right by him.
Yeah.
So it was in the front of the loud table, and it was right by the door. So I just remember you come in and you always gotta, grin as a kid at least. I always got a grin, good Shabbos, a smile. Unless he was, head covered in the middle of davening.
Yeah, I think I had one of the most epic stories with Rabbi Schweitzer was when it was in Pesach time. I think Bentzi Back was with me. Because I think he was there. Anyhow, basically, Abba was at work, and we were out, prowling around Suzanne Lake, hunting for, something interesting. And like sometimes you go over the brook and the thing and around and on the island. This is like way before the island was really inhabited, maybe like a little bit, And I think we went on the island and we were like crawling around. Anyway, we found a bunch of nests of geese. And I was like, okay, this is awesome. Shiluach HaKan. I don't know how to do it. So we went and we knock on the door for Rabbi Schweitzer. I tell Rabbi Schweitzer, I say, Shiloh Hakan or whatever. I'm trying to like explain it. And he's like, okay, I'm coming. He goes, really? He goes, Rosh Hashanah. So he said, yeah. So somehow he communicated to me that he'd never done Shiloh Hakan. And he only did it once, but it was on a farm. And the whole thing has to be like in Rosh Hashanah when you stumble upon it. That's like the mitzvah. Anyhow. So he goes inside and he puts on like a nice like bekisha. And, I think he might have even put on a strimal for it. Now, the funny thing is you have to realize, like, when I'm climbing, I'm like, to me, I don't think twice about climbing a fence, going through brush, crawling under a log. Anyhow, he comes with us, and we're taking him, through, an 8-year-old's or 10-year-old's version of, exploring. And he's trooping right along with us, and we had to get the ducks out of the way. Anyhow, we finally did it. And we all did Shiloh Hakan. He told us we did it together. We each picked up the egg and did it. And we came back.
Dude, didn't you have to bring baseball bats or hockey sticks with you to chase those geese away?
No, we threw sticks at it. And I think we even broke one of the eggs. I felt so guilty. And it was really, really says some guilt in there, right? No, but. Because
Canadian geese are vicious, man.
Yeah, they are vicious. And so that's what happened. So basically we, sorry about that. And so So then later on, though, Abba tells over, he goes, Rabbi Schweitzer, calls him up. He says, the Kleine Yehudala comes over and he takes me schlepping through the whole, lake. And I had to climb things. It's classic. And that was Rabbi Schweitzer. He was just awesome. And, one other, whatever. We'll save other stories for other times. But Mamish Gewalt, growing up there was just, it was unique. It was a mixture. It was a shul where there wasn't any feeling of what type of Jew you were. We're Jews in a little shtibel. And that's why I think that I always kind of felt uncomfortable in many other shuls, because all these other shuls, they're all wherever I went, they were all like a certain style of Jew. And I always felt uncomfortable. I didn't fit into Hasidic shul. I didn't fit into Litvish shul. I didn't fit into the more modern shul. I didn't fit into anything, because this was the only place that everybody was we just were. And everybody else had a certain, stereotype.
It's true. I feel the same. It's very interesting. I feel the same. Till now that we have our Karlbach shul, where we have every kind of yid there.
Yeah.
I finally feel comfortable.
Yeah, the Karlbach shul that we have here is also very much a huge mixture from Streimlach and Kippas Rugaz and black hats, up hats, down hats, long hair, short hair, payas, no payas,
I think that would be any Karlbach shul nowadays.
I don't know. Not all Karlbach shuls have. Yeah, I guess maybe they do. Maybe now more and more, there's more and more Hasidim and more black hats.
It is, but people have come to visit our shul, and they've told me they've never experienced anything like it. In the overall experience of both from the diversity of the crowd and the energy and the thing, it's something special. Thank God.
Yeah.
That's why I feel the Skullis from shul is killing me, man.
Yeah. I'll tell you, that's mamish. Today is Tiferes of Tiferes, which, by the way, if you count backwards, today is Hod of Hod. But
interesting.
And so it's mamish cool that the three of us are together. It's the third day of the third week, and so Tiferes of Tiferes is Hod of Hod. When I realized that, first of all, Tiferes of Tiferes is our holy friend Shimon Dadya's birthday, and
happy birthday, Shimon.
Happy birthday.
And Rabbi Gerzi's birthday.
Happy birthday.
And
happy birthday.
It's crazy. Tiferes of Tiferes. It's if I had a choice of when I would want to be born, it would be Tiferes of Tiferes. Gewalt. Anyhow, so I was just thinking that that we're all on this together, but Tiferes of Tiferes is mamish that real beautiful aligned space where you're okay with it all. You mamish make the space for all different flavors, like Yaakov Avinu makes space for all of his kids. And even though they're so different, they're mamish 12 completely different flavors. Magnifico.
Yes.
Anyhow, Kevra, it is getting late, and we do have a lot of things that we did not touch on yet, that we really would like to get into, but I think we could wrap up, unless there's one or two last things you guys want to touch on.
No, man, I think it's definitely time to wrap it up.
This has been fun.
By the way, we're coming up to the Rosh Hashanah your side. You mentioned Teferes Shabbat Teferes. When's the Rosh Hashanah? It's
Yud
Yud
Aleph.
Aleph Iyar, right? That's in what, like
10 days.
yeah, 10 days, 9 days.
Well, it's Bays. 9 days. It's the 9 days.
All right, what day of the sphere is that? Just remind me. I'm just curious. I'm gonna check it up quick.
I just want to throw something in there about our initial discussion about the authors and books, and Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sacks, reading his weekly or listening to his weekly Torahs have also been very life-changing for me. I would say the last year and a half, maybe.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I love Rabbi Sacks. I love listening to him speak.
Yeah, he's very, very powerful. I have to, so if we're going to jump back to there for a second, I didn't put out before, but one of, also an amazing, amazing writer who has had a very powerful effect is Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, colloquially known as just as Heschel. He is like one of these people that just opened my mind. First of all, he's mamish like a throwback from, I don't know, he's not a throwback. He's just unique. I highly recommend checking him out. Has some of the most amazing, most powerful books I've ever read. And some of the things that he talks about life. I may even throw a link to some of his YouTube. There's an amazing interview on YouTube with him. 45 minutes of pure Jewish gold. Unreal.
Cool. So awesome. So you'll put the link in the comments below.
Yeah, I'll throw it in the comments or something.
We should also put out our recommendations of books and Sfarim in there as well, so people could check them out.
That's a good idea. Maybe write that up.
And one second, I want to ask you: do you have a recommendation for one book that you would recommend to start off with from Rav Heschel?
Ooh, that's a good question. There's a book. I don't know. I really don't know. There's a few. There's one. I'm trying to remember the name of it. It's all about what the life of a Jew in Eastern Europe. It's probably the easiest one to read. Very, very powerful, and it really opens up what it was like for a Jew and just the living of a Jew in Europe. Now you have to realize Rabbi Heschel grew up he was born in Europe, and he was born into obviously the family of the holy Abt Rav, Rabbi Avram Yeshua Heschel of Abt, and so he's part of like a heavy dynasty of Hasidus and Yidden, but then he came to America, and he was out there doing amazing things. I mean, if you look at the picture of Martin Luther King marching, you see he's right next to him, yeah, or two away, whatever. But he's mamish like he was there at the forefront of so much, and he was he was amazing. So that book is one, The Life of a Jew in Eastern Europe. I forgot what the name of it's called. There's one which probably might be my favorite. I don't know if I can even say that. Which is all about Kutsk and the Kutsker Rebbe, and I think it's something like, let's see if I even have it somewhere. It's a phenomenal book. It's called A Passion for Truth. That's like a wild book, but it's very intense. I warn you before you dive into there that you're diving into a very raw, deep, profound book. But then you also, like God search for man and man search for God. These books are crazy. And his ideas about how to live, like he says, the one thing that gets him going is I just pray to God that I should live a life where I'm just excited and I'm amazed with life. I want to wake up every morning and just be amazed by things. He says, that's why I love it. And the way he wrote his books is you see that he's just amazed by everything. and he just looks at it and he goes, wow. And he's just inspired. And you hear the way he talks and the way he sees the journey through history and the way Hashem is slowly looking for us and we're looking for him. And this dance, it completely opened me up to the moment and to living life in a way which when I first started reading his books, it drastically changed my life for the better. And you know, by the way, one other one, which I just read only one book, but I feel it's already begun to change my life, Rav Adin Steinsaltz. I read this book. It has a whole bunch of like essays. It's like an introduction to Rav Adin Steinsaltz. And I started reading this book, and it also has completely captivated me. It's one of those, yeah. Gewalt.
Awesome. All right, guys, it's been real. I really, really, really enjoyed this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Times.
Amen.
Cheers,
Looking forward to do this
mates.
again. Be blessed, everybody. And mamish gewalt. We should continue to shine the light of Hashem into this world, into our moments, and we should be blessed to road trip again together soon.
Amen.
Amen. Amen.
L'chaim.
Fine.